Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lucas Stearns. I am the investigating officer of case number 1328976. At 11:30 p.m. on Tuesday, July 14, 2015, we were directed to a call from 1620 Orchard Avenue. Dispatch advised us that the caller from that address had reported that a television was dropped in the street in front of her house. The caller also indicated that she believed that the television was dropped by a man named Robert Hawes, who also goes by the name Bobby. She also told us that he lived at 1619 Orchard Avenue. When we arrived on the scene, we did find the television in front of 1620, and we made contact with the caller, who was a woman named Betty Markle. She was also accompanied by her 16-year-old daughter, Annabelle Markle. When we arrived, Annabelle had stated that she was awoken by a loud noise. And when she looked out her window, she saw a man who was wearing a jacket with a hood, whom she also identified as Mr. Hawes. When we went to 1619 to question Mr. Hawes, a white male with brown hair answered the door, stated that he was in fact Bobby Hawes. At the time, he was wearing only a green polo shirt, a pair of boxer briefs, and he was wrapped up in a blanket. While he was sitting on the couch and we were talking with him, he made some ruffling noises underneath the blanket. Just in case there was a weapon, we asked him to stand, upon which he dropped a plastic bag with several pieces of miscellaneous jewelry in it. At the same time, we also noticed at his feet was a small cash box on the floor. We asked him to get dressed. He put on a pair of denim pants of which the pant legs were soaked, and he put on a black sweatshirt with an attached hood. At the time that he put the sweatshirt on, I also did notice that he had a blood stain on the front of his shirt. And it was at that time that we advised Mr. Hawes that he was being detained pending the end of this investigation. When we re-entered the house, we found a pair of wet athletic shoes as well as a pair of bloody gloves in the trash can. Inside the bag of the miscellaneous pieces of jewelry, one in particular that we found that was interesting to note was a yellow gold ring with a large blue stone. The significance of this is that it was in fact a 25 years of service ring from General Motors. We also found in the bag a GM tie tack, a GM lapel pin, and a gold-colored box bottom. As to the cash box that was in question, we found only loose change inside of it, as well as some business cards and a voter registration card, both of which had a William Hunt's name on it. William Hunt was identified that of living at 1624 Orchard Avenue. And when we arrived at the scene of 1624 Orchard Avenue, we did see signs of a break-in. And when we went into further investigation inside the house, we found William Hunt on the floor on his back in his living room, deceased with a stab wound in his chest. At this point in the investigation, we determined that our prime witness for this case was in fact Annabelle Markle, as she had seen, upon talking to both Annabelle and Betty, she had appeared to have seen and gotten a full description of the suspect that was outside the house. Now, being that she is a minor at 16 years of age, her mother Betty was with her at all times and gave permission for us to interview Annabelle. For this particular interview, we just simply used the traditional style of interviewing, implying that it is simply a fact-finding situation where we ask questions and the answers, she answers just to the questions, and that helps us to aid in our investigation. So on record, of course, with her mother present, I asked her to repeat what she had told me, what she had seen. When she had woken up, she repeated that she had heard a loud noise, and when she went to the window, she saw a man who was wearing a pair of denim jeans, as she believed, and a black jacket or sweatshirt with an attached hood, which coincided and matched the description of the clothing that Bobby Hawes was wearing that evening as well. After the detainment of Bobby Hawes, we began the interview process. Now, for this particular case, we chose to go with inferential interviewing. Now, what inferential interviewing requires is essentially a series of questions aimed at not only getting the answers to the questions, but also gauging the interviewee's response to them. We look for things such as evasiveness, attention, the shortness of how the interviewee answers, or the delay in the answering, and we gauge emotional responses, body language, and things of that sort. So when we chose to go with inferential questioning or inferential interviewing for our suspect, we asked questions that were essentially almost conversational in nature, aimed at both getting answers from our suspect as well as gauging his response. So we started the questioning by just simply asking what he's been up to that night. He had responded that he had just been relaxing at home. When I asked if he had been out, he stated that he had gone for a jog earlier, and with some stammering, some hesitation in his tone. The jeans that he had put on with the wet pant legs, I asked why they were wet. In a very short response, he stated that he had slipped and fell. I made comment about the jewelry that we found at his house, and I told him it was very nice, and I asked him where he purchased it. Again, very shortly, he stated that he had been collecting the jewelry over the years. I asked him if he knew William Hunt. Again, very short and prompt, he stated no, not really. I asked him if he was missing a TV, and in the shortest response, very sharp, he stated, no, I am not. He was not missing a television at all. I made comment to the gloves. The last question I asked him, I made comment to the gloves that we found on top of the trash can. I noted that they were bloody, and I asked him if he had hurt himself. And he paused for a second, and he stated that he had scraped his knee when he fell. But again, very short and very prompt, he stated that he was fine, and basically he had the tone that it was there was no concern, and he just gave very short, very prompt answers to his questions. And that was the type of response that we were expecting, and the type of response that led us to believe that there was some suspicion in his statements, and possibly some discrepancies in the statements that he gave. At this point in time in our investigation, post the interview, forensics did come back with information regarding some of the evidence that we had found at Bobby Hawes' address. Most notably were the blood on the gloves that we found atop the trash can, as well as blood that we found on a knife that was buried further beneath the trash can. As it turns out, we did pull fingerprints off the knife. Not too surprisingly, the fingerprints on the knife at Bobby Hawes' house did in fact belong to Bobby Hawes. But the DNA from the blood that we took from the gloves and from the knife did in fact belong to William Hunt. At this point in time, Bobby Hawes had been declared as our prime suspect in this investigation, and as such we began the interrogation process. Now, as he was detained and in our custody, we chose to go with the custodial standard of interrogation. One of the most important things before we can begin the interrogation process is that his Miranda rights had to have been read, which they were, and before the interrogation process begins, he must waive those rights, which in fact he did. So I started out the interrogation by just asking how he was feeling that day, as the report states. He stated that he was fine. He was a little leery in his response, but he stated that he was fine. So I inquired about the DNA that we found at William Hunt's house and on the gloves as well. And I told him, I said, since in the interview you stated that you didn't know him, how can you explain the DNA that we found? He hesitated at first and stated that he was in fact at William's house that night. I asked him what he was doing there and asked him to be honest about it. He had stated to me that money had been tight for him lately and that he broke into the house and was planning to rob it. I inquired if that was the reason why we found William Hunt's item in his house. He stated, in fact, that it was. When I asked him outright why he killed William Hunt, at first he was denying it. He stated that he didn't. I told him that we had evidence that declared that he was at the house. When we got there, we found William Hunt dead with a stab wound to his chest, and that the blood on the gloves that we found at his house matched his, as well did the blood that from the knife. He paused and stated that he didn't expect when he broke into the house for William to be awake. William Hunt found him in the living room, and he came at Bobby with a bat. At that point, he reacted. He stated that he reacted. I specifically asked if he stabbed William Hunt, and he stated that he did. We did, as you can see from the report, achieve a full confession from him. And at this point, Robert Thomas Hawes has been placed under arrest and is pending a court date where the prosecutor will declare charges on Bobby Hawes, most likely leading to a manslaughter charge, most likely in the first degree, and the judge will carry out the sentence. Thank you very much.